everyone. Welcome to the show today. My name is Will Hankey with Red Canoe Media. Today we're talking on Navigate the Rapids with a good friend of mine, Chris Reimer, an award-winning communications strategist and a student of human interaction. He founded Rizzo Tees, a t-shirt company headquartered in his basement. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. He went on to become possibly the only human alive who went from being a CPA and CFO to a marketing and communication strategist. So we'll jump into that a little bit. Chris is the author of the new book, Happywork, which is phenomenal. Happywork, a business parable about the journey to teamwork, profit, and purpose. Did I do that correctly?
It sounds wonderful. Thank you.
He's a guest lecturer at Washington University and resides in St. Louis, Missouri, with his wife and 2 daughters who have escaped to Florida, from what I.
Terrible.
Yeah,
terrible.
Chris,
but I'd rather be here with you.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for being on today.
Oh, it's my great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. So I always like to start my show with kind of tell me about the past, and this leads into what I've kind of already talked about, which is the Rizzo Tees thing. And so tell me about the T-shirt business.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's start with me graduating from Marquette University almost 22 years ago with a degree in accounting, and I quickly, well, not quite quickly enough. I had to take the CPA exam twice, but I passed it in '95, and I became a CPA, and I was a controller and then a CFO of various organizations around St. Louis, and I was pretty good at it. I definitely learned a lot about business by helping to run organizations, from the finance side. During my last accounting job, back in 2007, I started building a T-shirt company called Rizzo Tees, and that name actually appeared to me in a dream. That's a little known fact about Rizzo Tees. I didn't do much marketing or research or anything like that. I woke up in the middle of the night and had dreamt the name, and I wrote it down on a notebook. That was before I even had a smartphone, so I didn't type it into my phone real quick and whatever. I wrote it down on a notebook so I wouldn't forget, and I woke up and looked at the notebook. I said, "Oh, that's it. That's the name." And we're of German heritage, so I don't know where the Italian name of Rizzo came from, but
funny.
But it worked, and so I ran Rizzo Tees until December of this past year, and so had a nice almost 7-year run and learned a lot about business and learned a lot about marketing, an awful lot about marketing, by trying to get those shirts in front of people's eyeballs and get them to sell. And
yeah.
I know we'll talk more about that. During the time that I had I just started building the business, I was working by day as a CFO, and I was increasingly unhappy at that particular organization, and it's no offense to them, but I was increasingly unhappy there, and I was just increasingly unhappy with my role as a CPA in general and just being an accountant. And sometimes when I say that, people laugh a little bit, well, of course you were.
Right.
Accounting's a plenty-fied profession. I know several fun accountants, but what I would say is that, after 15 to 20 years, it just wasn't for me anymore. But what was for me was something new that I found, which was marketing brands, marketing products, marketing oneself via social media. And I would also add blogging onto that as well, just the ability to write and put your thoughts out for the world's consumption and ridicule. And so I started blogging. My first blog was a personal finance blog that I probably started back in 2006 or 2007. Then eventually that was uninteresting to me, so I stopped. I started blogging as the basement entrepreneur. So this was me talking about what it took to run a business out of my basement. Then I realized that I probably should just have a blog on Rizzo Tees so that I could draw more people into the Rizzo Tees site. So I retired the basement entrepreneur. As you can see, I'm out of the basement, so I'm now up on the first floor, so this is great. And, eventually I realized that I could probably take a lot of these skills that I had gathered via really doing. It's and that's the thing, obviously very self-taught as far as marketing goes. Read a lot of books, watched a lot of keynotes, and did a lot of marketing on my own and learned what worked and what didn't and what resonated with people and what did not, and was able to move out of accounting, and I started working. I worked at an agency for 9 months that was, okay, and then ended up moving to a great agency, Falk Harrison, here in St. Louis, and did that job for 3.5 years. And then after that, moved on to be marketing director at Caldi's, and that is a role that is now just wrapping up, and maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that. But so
Sure.
my life now, and I left out the part about the book. I started writing a book a few years ago, and then the version that's out now was actually the third book that I was going to write. The first two were like, oh, I was sure I was going to write those, and then a better idea came along, and so Happywork, as it's currently constructed, is the third book, and that I started writing that in August of 2013, and it just debuted in February, and it's cool. I'm pretty proud of it. It's getting pretty good reviews. It's being well received. It needs to sell a little faster, but it's not an inferno. It'll have to be a slow burn, I guess. But I'm pretty proud of how the book turned out.
Yeah, that's cool. Hopefully we can talk a little bit about the marketing part of that book too. But
oh, please, that would be great.
Yeah, so let's go back to the shirts. What were some of the first kind of marketing things you attempted that maybe worked and maybe didn't work?
So, as I was building the business in 2007, leading up to the debut of the website, and so really the debut of the business in 2008, my marketing plan was basically place banner ads on famous bloggers' websites.
Okay.
So that's what I thought. That's what I thought. That's what I thought was going to happen, and things did not turn out that way. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry, you had frozen a little bit. Things did not turn out that way. Luckily, by the time the website went live, I really didn't have any money to place those ads, those banner ads, and so I was pretty much forced onto social media. And I had somehow heard of Twitter. I always say that I think maybe it was the NBC Nightly News, just like a story about this up and coming, and social media was still weird back in 2008. Twitter had been around for 2 years, so there were a lot of early adopters having a lot of fun, and I missed out on that. I just wasn't using it, but I joined Twitter because I felt like I had to. I saw, and I'm kind of an extrovert. I like talking with people, so once I joined the service, I don't want to say it was easy, but it was fun. It was neat to talk to people and have people talk back to me and to make friends, real friends.
Yeah, I think I joined it. I think I joined it in '07 and then didn't get it, which is probably pretty typical of social media, the new social media thing. I don't get it, so I put it on the shelf, and then I start hearing about it again. Okay, maybe I'll go check it out, and so that happened to me kind of the second time through.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think that I did get it. So what's interesting is when I go back and look at my first tweets over the first month or so, what was really interesting is, debuting a new business, absolutely needing to sell some stuff. I mean, not to feed our family. This was not a business that was going to make or break our family. But I did want it to grow large. I did want it to be my career at the time, which it didn't turn out to be so, and that's okay. But I really needed to sell some shirts. So what typically happens in marketing is the first thing you'll do is go and start talking about the things that you sell. And in my mind, I thought, well, no one really knows who I am, and no one understands my so-called creation myth here. They don't, and that's a wonderful thing about marketing. If your organization, the thing that you sell, the thing that you build, has what I call a creation myth. The story, like when I said that I dreamt the name Rizzo Tees, people find that interesting. And it's certainly more interesting than having not heard that story, right? And so,
absolutely. I get questions all the time about why Red Canoe. What does that mean? And it's a terrific icebreaker. If nothing else, let me tell you why.
No, precisely. And so, and the fact that I did build it in my basement, and that it ultimately contributed to a change in careers at age 39. People, and it's funny, is I go through the progression of, CPA to T-shirt to changing careers to writing a book. Different people find different parts of it interesting, if that makes sense. And so,
absolutely.
Having a slightly, I guess, complicated story isn't the right way to put it, but having a rich story full of interesting twists and turns is actually interesting to people, which is cool. And so that actually made the T-shirt business interesting. It made the debut of the book interesting. And if you're trying to sell something, it's better to be interesting than not interesting. And so, with Rizzo Tees, what I found is I was going online and just chatting with people. But I wasn't like chatting them up so that eventually they buy a shirt. It wasn't like, as Gary Vaynerchuk calls it, jab, 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 and then a right hook. I was just jabbing. I was just enjoying chatting with people and meeting people. And I still remember the first time ever where I met someone in person that I had first met online. It was just a wonderful, powerful experience. I mean, that happens all the time now, but the first time it happened, it was pretty neat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so what then happened, of course, is that some orders started coming in, and they were names that I recognized from Twitter, and that felt a little bit brilliant. That felt pretty cool. And
Absolutely.
So I continued to talk, but then what I found was that I was educating myself not only about social media and marketing, but about the world around us, and about what makes people tick and what people go through in their daily lives. And the more I learned, the more interested I got in people and what they go through at work, for instance, which ultimately led to the desire to write the book that I wrote. So for me, it was really spending a lot of time online and then also going out in public and doing speeches, presentations on what I believed about social media, about career transition. If someone asked me to come and talk, I usually said yes and went and did it. And really, it started enjoying presenting in front of people, which puts me in the minority, I would think, as far as people who enjoy public speaking. So.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd even go as far as saying that's probably one of my secrets to success, is the ability to go out and do a presentation in front of people. And I did one Saturday, and I still had the butterflies even after all these years. But you seem to get over it really quickly, especially if you know what the heck you're talking about.
Precisely. If you know what you're talking about, and another thing too that sometimes happens, like one or two friendly faces in the crowd can really make a difference for me. And I use humor in my talks too. It's just I can't help it. Like if I could give a super duper poignant speech about this or that, but if I don't get a few laughs, it just feels like a failure to me. And so I think I would make a poor politician, because they're always like talking serious and never going for the laughs,
Right, definitely. Yeah, I like to do the humor thing too. It's another way to do the icebreaker, which is always good. So.
True.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about social media and how it, beyond just influencing the T-shirt business, but how it started to kind of influence your overall life and what I don't know how to say, how you were seeing things, I guess.
Yeah, good question. I think so. One of the things you'll hear people say sometimes, and I think social media is being missold in this manner. I think people are either selling themselves incorrectly on it, or unfortunate social media consultants will talk people into this. They'll talk about how powerful social media is, and I would say that having a large platform of people to talk to, as I kind of do, is a good thing. I wouldn't want it to shrink or go away or anything like that, so got to admit that. But I think the power is within us. I've been saying this recently, and usually it really clicks with people when I say it. So there are some telemarketers in the world who are absolute experts at separating you from your money, right?
Right.
But they're not phone experts. The phone is just the tool.
Yeah.
They are communication experts. They know what to say and when to say it. They know when to bend the truth and when to completely break the truth. They know when to give and when to be quiet and let there be an awkward silence until it gets filled with, okay, I'm in, I'll buy. They're communication experts, and that's what I like to think about. That's how I like to think of myself, and that's how I like to try to help when I did this, when I would help clients with this, is to become an expert at communicating what it is that you believe or what it is that you sell, what it is that you're best at. What are you truly an expert at? It's not social media. It's these. They're just tools. They're tools. There's some people that know all the tricks of Twitter and all that, and they probably know a lot more than me, and that scares me sometimes. People think if you're a social media expert or whatever that you know everything there is to know about every platform, and I just don't. I have no idea. There's honestly young kids who are doing this so much better, but they're probably not communicating in a professional manner better, and they're probably not able to dial into a company's mission and then help to articulate it to an audience that has no clue who they are yet. And that's where I think I've in the past that I have been able to help a little bit. So
Yeah.
I don't know, what was the rest of your question? I think I forgot the rest of it.
Just how it kind of influenced, maybe changed the direction of your overall life, and
Yeah.
along with that, how it started to move out of the CFO world and into the world of marketing.
Yeah, I think so. For me, I will say that social media absolutely did help build this so-called personal brand. And so having spent enough time online talking about the things that I believe, helping people when they needed help, and all of that created a personal brand, for better or for worse. It's kind of like I get the chills a little bit in a bad way, just thinking like, I feel like I'm just me and not a brand, but so be it. If people think that I'm good at this or that, or have influence or connector, or people say like, you know everybody in town. No, I don't. Like, I do not. It's like, it's ridiculous how many people I do not know. But what I would say is that when it came time to try to make a career transition, it was actually easy because of all the work I had already done on social media. And it just so happened that all of the work I had done on social media set me up for a job in social media. You know, if I had been an accountant and wanted to change to being a lawyer, it's possible that like social media could have helped me build a personal brand as someone who is just sharp and someone who presents himself well and who has a network of people, and that could have helped me become a lawyer. But in this case, I think it was even easier because using social media made me look like a social media expert, and therefore I could go to work in social media. So it was like even easier, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so for me, I mean, that job search, that first job search, it was a private search. You know, it was not like the sort of free agency thing that I'm kind of doing right now. But
Right.
I sent 2 emails. That was my job search. All I did was send 2 emails, and both recipients quickly responded, and one of them said, "Let's meet," and offered me a job like on the spot, basically.
Oh,
And
wow.
so yeah, that was like the first. That was it, you know, and it, you know, the job was like didn't pay super well. It was, you know, nothing like that, but it was a matter of, okay, that was kind of easy, you know. And so then, and honestly, that job and the next 2 jobs, like a resume wasn't even part of the picture. Like we didn't even use a resume, and so you know, that speaks to me that we're able to, you know, maybe resumes are going to be a thing of the past, but there's still a lot of places that will ask for your resume. Trust me on that. And so, yeah, for me, it was just a matter of people know what they're getting. And let's be honest, like when you're trying to hire someone or you're trying to get hired by someone, there's definitely like way too many unknowns there, and we're probably never going to solve that. They can try to scope your social media as much as possible to try to figure out who you are. They're not getting the whole picture. It's just the truth, right? Yeah. But what I would say is that I try to give people as much of a picture of who I am so that they will consider me a known quantity. So that when I'll be on a job interview, they'll honestly say, they'll see me as seasoned, and they'll just skip the hard questions. They'll literally skip the hard questions. They'll even tell you, we're going to skip some of these questions. They just, you know, they just look at you like, okay, you probably would just answer these anyway, you know. And like, you can ask them if you want. Let's have some tough questions. Let's do it, you know. And I like tough questions, but it's just part of building that personal brand. Obviously, involved the use of the internet and social media. And so if I ever made a video that someone watched and said, oh, I need to try video, and then they tried video and realized how hard it can actually be, they considered me an expert. If it was, oh, that guy's tweeted 135,000 times, for better or for worse, oh, with the big followership or whatever, that guy's an expert. If they saw a blog and they read it and they were like, whoa, I just took a lot of information out of this blog post, then I was an expert on that. And all that stuff built together was like a living, breathing online resume, basically, that has assisted me in whatever I've done. So if I was at Falk Harrison, it helped generate business leads. If it was looking for a job, as I happen to be right now, then it opens up doors that I didn't even know were there. And so for all that time spent was not only, educational and fun, and it's just fun to make friends, but it actually paid off, as it were.
Yeah. Do you think? I know you're looking for a job now. Do you think that your persona online it influences? I know you kind of said they skip over the tough questions, but do you think that that's part of it? That's the kind of guy we want. So they're already thinking, they already know a lot about you before they even hire you.
So I think if I take your question right, you're saying that perhaps they're already talking themselves into wanting to hire me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like too conceited, but I think that's possible.
Yeah.
So I think what happened is like we can get into this. I mean, at my current place of employment, they're making some switches and budgets are changing a little bit, and so because of that, I'm looking, and it's totally fine. Like no hard feelings whatsoever. Like leaving on a super high note, everything is great, but still gonna drink plenty of coffee, so no worries there.
Right.
But yeah, no, Caldi's is treating me quite well. But yeah, like once I did what I call declared free agency, to kind of use this sports analogy, it's the first time ever, really since college, where I hadn't had that first job yet. This is the first time ever that I've conducted a completely public job search. Of course, back then, like no one would have given a crap, because like no one, what public, like what friends, like the guys in the dorm, like who is that,
Right.
People like my dad or my uncle knew. This is a completely different game now. This is the first time I've ever conducted a search like this, and it's fascinating. Like I post about it, and then like you can tell some people got excited about it, and they're like, "Whoa, he's available." And I was like, that's kind of what I wanted to see happen. And I was like, I had this weird fear that I was going to say, I'm available, and it would be like crickets in a room, right? And but it didn't happen, and it was very heartwarming and felt great, because obviously you're like a little bit of a low when you like, oh man, I got to go get a new job. This is a bummer, and my wife's not happy about it, and all that stuff. And now it's turning out okay. There's opportunities are happening, and yes, I do think that because in an employer's eye, they're looking at you and they're seeing a resume. And look, man, everyone lies on their resume a little bit, right? So, like, if you take that with a grain of salt, like, what are we really getting here? Is this person going to be a culture fit? And thank goodness more employers are starting to care about that, right? And try to build good cultures and then have people be a good culture fit for that good culture, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that yes, absolutely. Like in this, this super tired word transparency. I mean, look, man, I've tweeted 136,000 times. That is like, and I've done 1,000 blog posts, and I'm a pretty open book. And so, in that respect, what you don't know about me is probably not much. And if there is something, you could just ask me, and as long as it's not one of those illegal HR questions, I'll answer it, right? I mean, it's so yeah. I think that in this world where we have these tools online where we're able to express ourselves, I think absolutely taking advantage of it, as long as you are not a jerk, so that you're not amplifying something that's not good via your use of social. And I know people like that still. Like every single day they're amplifying crap. I'm like, okay, keep going, I guess. Social media is powerful, But I think it's an absolute help. I do not mind having the advantage. Now, on the flip side, let me say this. There are some employers who may think, oh, like, and this is just going to sound terrible, but, like, people will call me a rock star and all this stuff. It's just embarrassing. And but when they do that, like, I'm wondering if some people think, oh, does he have too much on his mind and therefore, like, won't be able to come in and, like, dedicate himself to our cause? And it's just not so, but I can understand where someone would feel that way.
Yeah, is he going to be too high maintenance or something?
Yeah, like I'm not that, I don't think, but I do have personal pursuits, right? And so, like, I will come work for you, but then you'll see a video series on my website, called Happywork TV. So, like, I'm going to continue to record those. So what's interesting is, like, as an employer, they could look at that and think, oh, Chris is so busy with this stuff. What's he? And that's one of the biggest problems, I think, with marketing itself, is that its impact can sometimes be hard to quantify. And so because you're shaping a brand and you're shaping a voice, and You know, if you are working for an organization and all that time you spent on social media results in additional leads coming in, who gets the credit for that? Do the salespeople get the credit for it? Do the SEO people on the website get credit for it? Or do I get some credit for it, for having curated a voice online and, you know, increase the size of a marketing asset, whether it be Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or the email list itself? Who gets the credit? I want some of the credit. I'm on the team, but that's the thing with marketing. It can be really hard to quantify. It's an art form like painting almost, you know? Like if I said, hey, Will, I'm going to send over Picasso and he's going to paint your self-portrait. It's not going to look like you. Are you going to have a problem with that? You're going to be like, dude, this doesn't look like me, you know? Like, art, it's subjective, right? You could look at it and say, oh, it's a masterpiece, it's Picasso, or you could look at it and say, well, that doesn't really look like me. That's how subjective marketing can sometimes be. What do you think about that?
Yeah, totally agree. It's very different depending on who's looking at it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, big time. And what's important to them, you know?
The spectrum. My wife, actually, let me back up. You talk about how you've written all this stuff and you're always out there, and my wife always kind of makes comments about, you know, Will, you're everywhere. You know, there's no place that Will is not. You know, and if they can't find you, then there's something wrong with them. So, you know, she is quite the opposite. Not online. She has her little Facebook page and talks to people, but beyond that, she's not, you know, she's not in our world, I guess you could say. Yeah. And so after about 8 years off, she decided she wanted to go find a job. So she goes and applies at a temp agency, and somebody picks her up right away. She's extremely talented, and this is kind of my segue into the whole Happywork thing. Yeah. She's been there about 6 weeks now at this place, and she asked me to take her to work this morning. So we're driving to work, and I just finished her book up, and she starts telling me about the meetings that they had, and how she's been there, like I said, about 6 weeks now, and they had a meeting yesterday, and she wasn't invited.
Okay.
How she was telling me, you know, that immediate dynamic, like you talk about in the book, where you're part of the group but you're not part of the group, you know, and she's treated as not part of the group. So it was kind of interesting hearing her talk about that and having just finished the whole Happywork thing, and just, you know, understanding that dynamic from quite a different angle.
Yeah, and your screen froze up a little bit during what you were saying, but I mean, I think I heard enough to understand that, you know, yeah, that's just really hard. You know, I mean, if she should have been in the meeting and like wasn't in it, then, you know, like people need to understand the exact signal that has the potential of sending. And so what's happening there is that, you know, the people who run the organization or her comrades who are, you know, she's working shoulder to shoulder with are not taking her perspective on things. And so in the book, Happywork, I do talk a lot about the importance of taking the perspective of other people and, you know, having a little bit of empathy for what they might be going through, especially as a new employee too. So I think where companies miss a lot, you know, is obviously in the onboarding process or lack thereof, where, you know, people come in and it's like, okay, like here's where you're going to sit, here's your stapler, you know, the bathrooms are over there, and, you know, that's, you know, man, those first couple of days, they're not easy, man. People are nervous. The butterflies, like you talked about earlier, you know. Yeah. So that's one thing that Caldi's did brilliantly was the onboarding process. You know, like a full month of actually working jobs throughout the organization, really understanding what people go through, going and making deliveries.
Oh wow!
To grocery stores with the delivery driver, not so that someday I could understand exactly where to drive product in case he was sick, but understanding what he goes through as a delivery driver. You know what he goes through? He goes in the back of grocery stores and, like, the people working back there, no one says hi. And he smiles and is like, hey, how's it going? What's up? What are you doing this weekend? And all this, and can barely get talk out of people. And it doesn't matter how many grocery stores we went to, hardly anyone smiled in the back. And it's just interesting to note that he goes through that. And so if I see him one day with even the slightest scowl on his face, I could say, I wouldn't say, hey, you know, turn that frown upside down. I would say, hey, what's up? And I might understand that he had just gone through a whole day of not being talked to or smiled at one time. So it's taking the perspective of other people, and it sounds like, uh, you know, hopefully this job of hers is going to turn out okay. And if there's even the slightest hint of trouble, maybe she can affect positive change there. You never know.
Yeah, yeah. So we kind of jumped into the whole Happywork thing. Tell me a little bit about it, an overview of it, and what spurred you to write it in the first place.
Yeah, let me start with that first question. So, what spurred me to write it probably started with my mother. So my mom worked for 30 plus years for the U.S. government, for the Army, and it was a job that she really did not like too much. And my brother and I, as young kids, were, obviously as inquisitive as any kids are, and asked a lot of questions about her job. We were just interested in, knowing what was up, and caught wind of the fact she didn't like her job. She was certainly properly reserved about it and wasn't like complaining to us and stuff, like me and my wife do now with our kids, right? But she was properly reserved about it. But we caught wind that she didn't like it, and we then said why, and she's just, we kind of caught wind that maybe it was some of the people she worked with, some of the generals, like literally generals, who probably don't take a lot of crap from anybody. And then we're like, okay, that's great, but like, why don't you go get a new job? Why don't you leave? And it was two answers. I mean, one, she simply lacked the mobility to do so. She did not go to college. Her family did not have the means to do that, and so is not a college graduate, and is absolutely one of the smartest people that I know. Like, you want my mom on your trivia team, at the trivia.
Right.
Like, she knows stuff. She is smart. She kills at Jeopardy, but it's just, but at that time lacked the mobility to go find something new. The opportunities, I don't think, were quite as vast as they are now frankly, for folks like you and me and probably all your listeners. And so, the other thing too is that she just felt like it was her job to support us. So she didn't look at her job as the job to go and help like the Army, better equip its weapons to like make sure that we win wars and stuff. It was that her job was to support us so that we, could, as I say in the book, stand on his shoulders, and reach for something greater. And so
Right.
she did that extremely well. However, when she told us that story, me and my brother looked at each other and thought, this is a wonderful sentiment, thanks, Mom, but we still don't understand, and so we were being stubborn kids. And that, when kids ask those why questions, we're just trying to construct a world that makes sense to us, and like, where do we sit in the sandbox, and like, what does the world mean, and where do we fit into it,
Right.
And so that's why those questions were getting asked, and our inability to get a decent answer was the equation that went unsolved for like my whole life. That's where it started. That is absolutely where it started. Where it continued was probably some of my jobs that I had. Never like super awful, horrible jobs. Like, never had objects thrown at me at work. I've barely been. I don't think I've been yelled at work. Not even a single time in all my years. And that sneak preview. Those things happen in my book, and a whole lot more. But I've never had like one of those super awful jobs, but I've clearly had jobs that annoyed the heck out of me, right? And so, like, we all have. And so I took a lot of lessons from those feelings that I had when when those things were happening to me, and I realized my productivity is actually suffering right now. This is probably not part of any like grand plan to make this company like blow up and succeed. Like, I should be more productive than this, but I simply can't help myself. I don't feel that way right now.
Yeah.
And so in my book, what happens is I have I would say two main characters, but there's a failing company. It's about 30 days away from being taken away by the bank and split up for spare parts so that they can be made whole. And so the second generation CEO, a guy named Dick Venori of Venori Incorporated, is a nice person with a decent heart, but a little bit bumbling. And so there's a lot of different kinds of CEOs in this world. This is the one that I made. Kind of a nice guy, bumbling, a little bit detached, way too detached, let's put it that way. And so he realizes now that with this 30-day window to pull a rabbit out of a hat and save the company, he pulls in a really awesome turnaround specialist. And that is one of my two main characters, Sam Maslow. So Sam comes in having really never failed to turn around a company, and one of his main tools is layoffs and restructuring, and that's, let's be honest, that happens all the time, and sometimes it's like absolutely completely required to help save a company or help restructure a company for the world it now lives in. But
right, it's the whole office space.
Bill, I thought a lot about Office Space while I was writing this book. I have to admit, I've never, and this is the first time I've said this to anyone, like on air or off. In certain ways, like it's the insanity of that space. You know, it was in a tech that really did inspire me to like, make, and like that workplace was just like dull and dead inside. Like mine is the worst company that you could possibly imagine working for. It's like I have constructed hell on earth, and I have you work there when you read the book. I don't know if you feel the same way. I mean, I tried to make it as evil as possible. I ran out of ideas, frankly. You know, it was like, how can I make this an even crazier place?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun seeing who the next character was going to be, and the, oh my God, you know, this one's worse than the last one. The HR lady was just crazy.
She was. And it's funny, I've had HR people reach out and say, this is completely unrealistic. I'm like, you're crazy. Like, you haven't worked around in enough companies, because there's people like this. And most of those HR stories, like the way that the stories I tell about the 3 rounds of layoffs at this fictitious company in my book, those things actually happened. Not all at one company. But in my book, I was the writer. I could do whatever I want. So they have all happened at my company. But those things happen in real life to real people. Those are real stories. The only story I made up was the phone getting thrown, which obviously has really happened. But I don't know anyone who had a phone thrown at them. I don't. That part I did make up.
Yeah.
But so in my story, Sam comes in as this super duper expert. Like, to use a bunch of like military terms, I mean, he is the hired gun. He's sort of the mercenary. He just doesn't miss, you know, and what ends up happening is he befriends a gentleman who I would call my other main character, an older gentleman named Charlie, who works in the mailroom but has wisdom beyond his job title, let's put it that way. And Charlie is a really smart guy, and you're just not exactly sure why. Maybe he just reads a lot, who knows, but he starts to impart some wisdom on Sam that he feels Sam needs. He knows why Sam's there. Charlie's been there through the 3 rounds of layoffs, hadn't happened to get laid off, but he sees Sam as someone who's a little bit too by the numbers, and he starts to, as I said, impart a little bit of wisdom on Sam, and while that's happening, Sam is also getting mistreated by people in the organization. The very organization that hired him to come in, Dick Venori, the head, is unable to get people to cooperate with Sam. And Sam runs into a lot of different situations that really start to eat away at him. And it's the severity of the situations, but it's also the volume of the situations. Like every day there's something else unfortunate happening, and it starts to accumulate. The phrase that I use in the book is it starts to collect like plaque on teeth. And I think it's the perfect analogy, because as I say in the book, you really can't see plaque forming, but then you're at the dentist, and they are like working their butt off to try to get all that stuff off your teeth, and they're just scraping and scraping. You're like, oh, 6 months of failed brushing? Like, what happened? You know, you just have no idea. It collects over time, and it can be big things. I mean, I met with someone recently they're working a job right now, and like everybody there is racist. They're like, she is the one person. She is of mixed race, so she has been called the N-word at work. All these things, all of that big stuff. It's going to add up over time. But there's little things that will add up too. Like every single day, you know, like just dumb stuff, like, you know, no one cleans the dishes in the sink, you know. Just all those little things, like people keep burning microwave popcorn and just ruining the whole office smells, you know. Little things add up over time too, like glances and stares and glares and sneers and passive aggressive, and then, you know, getting blamed for things that you didn't do, and having other people take credit for the things you did do. All of that stuff just gets super old. Actually having your work sabotaged by others, you know, it's almost like that's the kind of stuff that happens in politics. It shouldn't happen in our places of work, right?
Right.
And so these things start to break Sam down, and you see someone who you know is the best at what he does, and he finds himself unable to perform. And what ends up happening is, he does end up making some interesting discoveries. He does get together with Dick Venori, the CEO, and he lets Dick know, frankly, what an awful company he is currently running.
Right.
And Dick doesn't feel good about this. And so they decide to create a work code of conduct, and it's called the Happywork Agreement. And it is 46 commitments that employers and employees are going to make to each other. So I purposely, and this may be depressing sales a little bit, it's always best to choose sides, especially when you're marketing.
Right.
Don't be afraid to polarize. Don't taste like vanilla.
Yeah.
You gotta taste like bitter dark chocolate. Because some people don't like that. Those people are crazy. Dark chocolate's awesome, but you gotta polarize a little bit. And I didn't want to polarize here. We've got enough polarization in the world. We have enough factions fighting each other within the walls of work. Never mind regulation and competitors trying to eat our lunch and changing landscape and all that external stuff we have to deal with. No, we decide that we want to compete and fight internally first. Let's get that out of our systems. And sometimes we don't get it out of our systems, and those places become horrible places to work. And so I purposely did not choose sides with this Happywork Agreement. I have employers obviously, making commitments like, let someone go and take care of a sick kid, and I promise to give feedback, in a very straightforward manner. Praise will be public, criticism will be private. All those things that we're all sick of bosses doing. But employees don't get off so easy either. So employees show up on time. Why should they have to be in this agreement? Absolutely show up on time, or call when you can't. If you quit and give 2 weeks notice, don't quit during those 2 weeks. Don't give up. Of course it's not going to be 100% effort. Give 90 or 80.
Yeah.
20. Your coworkers don't deserve that. And neither does the company. So for me, it's really about cooperation. And this is the kind of talk that will lose certain CEOs, and it may lose certain entry-level people too, because they're so used to fighting with each other, and I've just had enough of it. So I wrote a book where I'm like, if our company is succeeding, we can all share in that success. And if we have a failing company, we need to all share in that failure too, all of us, not just lame leadership. It's you too, person working, in the entry level. It's all of us. And so we need to band together and sort of take the Spartan model, where 300 locked in arms, all strong, all with those, whatever you call it, those shields or whatever, and no one's going to break through. And the reason is not because I'm strong, it's because I know I can trust my neighbor. And so those are the kind of teams that I've worked on that, you're just energized to go to work and you just feel unstoppable. So the book is about trying to create, happier, more fulfilling workplaces where it's easy to do great work, not challenging to do great work.
Yeah. Have you had any calls from CEOs or business owners that said, this is awesome, we've adopted this?
It's a little bit early since the book just came out in mid-February. I did have a company buy 40 copies, and I went and spoke to their annual, conference where they pull people in from around the country, and that went well, and there were a few people in the audience who I don't think liked what I had to say, but there were quite a few people who did, and so I think it was something that the company probably needed to hear, and so I think it was really pleasing that I got the chance to do it, all to the tune of 40 books sold, which was great. But it was just great to go and sort of test drive the content a little bit too, and so it was pleasing to do that. But no, to answer your question, I think it's a possibility that in the future there could be some consulting surrounding this, but it's just, I'm not aiming for that right now, and it's not happening right now. Yeah. But I am getting people who are emailing me, because I invite you in the back of the book. I invite people to get with me and let me know what's going on, good or bad. And I am getting emails from people, and people, like I say in the book, sometimes it's just helpful to talk to someone about it, and so people are emailing me crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Stories that I'm hearing, I'm just whoa, that's going in the sequel, because that's just, I can't even believe you just told me that.
I think it's affecting more than maybe you realize. Just me driving my wife to work today, and that was on my mind because of the story she was telling me. So how can people get, or how can people pick up the book? It's on
Yeah.
Amazon, I guess.
It definitely is on Amazon. So if you go on Amazon and search Happywork, so it's one word. I've created a new word by using two
Nice.
familiar words, so Happywork. But if you want to learn more about the book, you can go to happyworkbook.com, and that should just take you to my website, chrisreimer.com, and the book page where it talks all about what the book's about. You can see some endorsements and who liked it and stuff like that. And if your listeners enjoy Twitter, they can also find me at Chris Reimer on Twitter, and I would love to chat with you there.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. So the book's on Amazon, and you're. I know that you were sneaking into some stores here in the St. Louis area and signing copies of them.
Yes, thank you for the reminder, actually. So the book is also available nationwide at Barnes & Noble. So that's pretty awesome. So I've been going to several Barnes & Nobles and walking in and saying, hey, that's just weird. I'm like, hey, I'm the author of this book. Can I sign it? And they don't ask for ID or anything. It's so odd. So I open the back of the book where my picture is. I'm just like, it's really me. Just wanted you to know. They don't even care. They're like, here's a Sharpie. Sign it. I could just go sign a bunch of books. It'd be hilarious. But yeah. So if you want to burn some fossil fuel and go buy a book at a store, go to Barnes & Noble.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I really appreciate you being on the show today. We touched on a ton of different things, so it'll be interesting to go back and watch it again, and I really appreciate your time today.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, if you're in the Red Canoe Elite part of our group, then stick around. Chris is going to answer a couple more questions. And for everyone else, thanks for listening to Navigate the Rapids. Take care.